Now that the NHL trade deadline has come and gone, now we're going to take a look at some of the top teams that are the winners and losers. Which teams made the best deals for now and to get into the playoffs, as well as the future, depending on where their teams are at, and which teams did not do well, failed to get good returns, or failed to make the moves they need to have playoff success. We'll discuss the winners and losers of the 23 NHL trade deadline coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're going to take a look at the NHL trade deadline 2023 version of the winners and losers. I do this video every year once the deadline passes, once we've had a chance to kind of analyze all the activity and take a look at which teams I felt had a great deadline and which teams did not. Obviously, like I said, some of these teams are in completely different positions. I may classify a team as a winner because they had a really good team and they added to it and they loaded up for the playoffs, and I like all the moves, the prices they paid, etc. I may take another team and classify them as a winner because they sold off a bunch of assets and they got a good haul for the future, good asset management, and did the right thing for their franchise moving forward. Teams might be losers, like I said, because they failed to make the moves and be successful, at least in my opinion, or perhaps they didn't get good returns, overpaid, things like that. So let's dive right in and take a look at the breakdown here. First, we're going to talk about the teams, in my opinion, that did not have a good deadline, and I'm going to put into the losing category. First up, I'm going to put the Chicago Blackhawks in here. They certainly sold off a number of assets. I'm calling them losers because their most prized possession here is Patrick Kane. Now, I understand that he had all the leverage and dictated himself going to the Rangers, so getting a good return was very challenging, and I knew it was going to be unlikely. But they basically moved their top, arguably franchise's all-time greatest player for pennies of the dollar. Just not great. I mean, obviously they made a lot of other deals as well. They traded Max Domi, they traded McCabe, Lafferty. I just overall feel like they didn't do too bad. Like, to be honest, they're not the worst of the losers by any means. I think there were teams that did a much worse job than Chicago. I just don't know. I'm just not sure that this franchise is really in a good spot. This rebuild is going to be long and painful, and I just don't know that they got good enough returns on some of these players. But then again, some of these players were, well, the one thing, for example, that I also didn't like was McCabe's salary being retained, where he has term too. Like, I'm not sure they really needed to do that, but for Toronto to make it work, they did. I just wonder if there might have been another deal up there, but certainly not the worst of the bunch. I just personally didn't feel that they had great returns and great asset management. But the big one for me was just the return on Kane. But like I said, it's not really Chicago's fault. It's just really painful to watch them give away Kane for pennies on the dollar, considering how valuable he was to the franchise for all those years. Now, another team I thought didn't have a good deadline was Montreal. Now, Montreal, I'm not going to put too much blame here and Kent Hughes, the GM. I think he's done a pretty good job for the most part. A lot of this was more on the players and the fact that they're guys that are pending UFAs that they could have sold off for good returns just haven't produced this year, and there just wasn't any interest. I was shocked that they managed to find a trade for Evgeny Dadonov to Dallas. I mean, they get Gurianov in return. That was phenomenal. I mean, from that perspective of the deadline, because that happened obviously a little bit ahead of time by a few days, that I thought was a decent deal. But they didn't have the option to really get a deal for Jonathan Jerard. They weren't able to move Joel Edmondson, Mike Hoffman, all these veteran guys. Armia's another one. But I'm sure they'd love to move on from these contracts. Sean Monahan, another good example. Just due to injuries and inconsistent play, a lot of these guys just had no value. Nobody wanted them. So they have a bunch of pending UFAs that they were not able to get moved. But like I said, that's not because Kent Hughes didn't do a good job. It's just overall as a team, it's not really what you want to see. This is more, I think about, you could maybe say that maybe moving some of these guys earlier when their value might have been better would have been, perhaps a better idea. Now, in the case of Duran, he struggled for a long time, so I'm not sure there really has been a spot there in quite some time. But at the end of the day, I just don't think the Habs had a great deadline. But a lot of that's not shocking because of the players. And again, not a reflection really of Ken Hughes not doing a good job. Just not really what the team probably had in mind when the season started. So I don't think I can call them winners, but they're, certainly not bad losers. There's teams here that did a worse job, way worse job than that. That is for sure. Case in point, the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers, to me, are a mess. The Flyers and the Canucks, in my opinion, and the Coyotes are probably the 3 worst teams running in this sport. I'm not fond of any of the GMs and the roles and the jobs they're doing with those franchises right now. The Philadelphia Flyers failed to move JVR, even at 50% retain. I know there was comment from Chuck Fletcher saying he didn't have offers. I don't completely believe that, based on reports we've seen from different NHL reporters out there. To me, it's bad asset management. We saw a trade of McEwen for Brendan Lemieux. I'm not really sure that's any kind of an upgrade, really. You could have signed or extended McEwen. I don't know really what the point of that deal was. Well, it wasn't anything special. I mean, I would have liked to have seen them maybe move on a few other players and try to retool a little bit more. But the Flyers team, and like the Canucks, to me, need more of a rebuild, and they just don't seem to be ready to embrace that. But I know going into the deadline, Chuck Fletcher made it known the Flyers were wide open for business. They were listening on just about anybody, but yeah, they did just about nothing. So I don't know. Kevin Hayes is another one. He might be bought out in the summer, and I don't know. To me, I would have retained money on that and tried to move him. There's definitely teams out there that were speculated to have interest, like Colorado, Carolina, to name a few. To me, I can't believe Chuck Fletcher didn't get anything done. I don't know what they're doing there. Philly, not fond of what they've got going on. Like I said, the Canucks are another team. Reportedly had an offer for JT Miller, but it was all futures-based and draft picks, and they reportedly declined because of the fact that they wanted to retool and get another centerman back instead. And I was like, you had a chance to get out of an 8-year contract that you almost had buyer's remorse on instantly, and you didn't take it. Like, that's shocking. Now, I understand why Besser didn't get traded. That was tough. Maybe it's best to hang on to him and hope his value goes up with a strong finish to the season. That's certainly a possibility. They traded Curtis Lazar. That's another option that to me was, it was okay. I mean, it's not like he was that huge of a piece. They traded Luke Shen. Listening to Quinn Hughes, man, they did an interview with him. He looks really sad and frustrated with the state of the Canucks. And if I'm Canucks fans, I'm concerned that if it starts to show in Patterson too, like your 2 stud players, I don't know, man, like this, the long-term future and the frustration level, I would be worried. I really would be. Listening to Quinn Hughes talk, it just gets the feeling that I'm not sure that he's overly thrilled with how things are going. We've seen a few times, especially on the blue line, that some of these guys, Shannon before him was Tanev, that he was, they were good mentors for him, get close with, enjoyed playing with them, thought they were good for the team, and they were good players, did a good job, and then they get moved out. And it's tough. It's tough on the head and the mental aspect of things. So I'd be concerned about what he's thinking right now for sure if I'm Vancouver, but I'm not a fan of the direction and work here from Alvin in Rutherford here in recent times. The Florida Panthers, I'm going to call them losers as well of the day. They didn't do a whole lot of activity. And to me, I'm not convinced that this team, like the Calgary Flames, really are built right. I mean, I think after the move they made in the offseason, it's fair to say we might not see Jonathan Huberdeau, Matthew Tkachuk, and even Johnny Gaudreau was off the Flames as a UFA. Like, all these top players kind of connected between these two teams are, like, probably not even going to be in the playoffs this year, at least it's looking that way. I'm surprised we didn't see Florida trade off at least one of their forwards to try to shake things up, get a little bit of flexibility moving forward. I really thought if they, there's a real good chance to me that they don't make the playoffs. I'm not convinced they're going to. Now, it could happen. A lot of their fate is going to depend on their division rivals, like the Sabres and the Senators. If they keep playing well and keep getting points, it's going to make it awfully tough on Florida to get in. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I'm surprised they didn't do at least a little something there to kind of shake things up and maybe sell off one of their contracts of the shorter-term deals, like Reinhart Bennett or one of those guys. I really thought they might be heading out. Winnipeg, I'm not real thrilled with Chevy and the company there. They obviously they don't have that much confidence in this team, or they would have been more aggressive. They had Niederreiter, Nemestikov. Like, to me, I just don't know that they really, they get some extra depth. And, maybe then again, maybe they're looking at like teams in the East and saying, like, these guys are so stacked, even if we do well in the West, we're not going to stand a chance. I don't know. At the end of the day, though, like, we've seen Winnipeg be aggressive before, and to some degrees it worked out, not always. They haven't gotten too far in the playoffs, but they did have a good run to the West Final a few years back. But I just would have liked to have seen them do a little bit more because I'm concerned with the long-term future of the Jets and with the uncertainty around Scheifele, Wheeler, Dubois. I would have maybe been a little more aggressive, I think, to go for it now because to me the West is fairly wide open. And with a little bit of insulation, a little bit of help, I think that Jets team could have been really good, especially the way Connor Hellebuyck has played this year. The San Jose Sharks are another team I thought could have done more. I mean, some interesting moves for sure. Erik Karlsson, I know they would have loved to have seen him go, but I understand that it's really complicated and challenging given the term and money on the contract. But like LeBanc didn't go, Reimer didn't go. James Reimer seemed sad he didn't go too. It looked like he was really hoping to get moved to a contender. But those are a couple of players I thought would have been not easy to move, but certainly doable, at least I thought. So I just would have liked to see them do more. Obviously, they traded Timo Meier. I think they did okay in that return. We'll see long term, but at the end of the day, they've moved out some important pieces like Meier, but they have some other assets there that are going to be probably leaving through other means that were not traded. Now, LeBanc's not a UFA to be here soon, so there's still a possibility he might stick around and maybe he gets moved at a later time, but still, I thought for sure that somebody might pick him up. As far as your winners go, I really like the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think Kyle Dubas has done a great job stacking up that team moving forward. I mean, you've added Ryan O'Reilly, a top 6 forward or number 3 center, extremely versatile, good defensively, chips in offensively. You got Noah Cherry, good physical bottom 6, or 4th line forward as well. You got Sam Lafferty, another addition to the bottom 6 to add another threat on the PK and a great speed. That worked out well. Jake McCabe could kind of be a newer version of Jake Muzzin, a physical left side defenseman. So, I like that. They needed that grit on the back end, so that part was good. We've also seen them add Luke Shannon, of course, comes back to the Leafs, which is going to be interesting as well. He's going to get his old number 2 jersey back, which is kind of neat. Luke Shannon is who some people call a human eraser, the all-time leader in hits now. Like Luke Shannon is a nice physical, experienced defenseman back there. Good leader, good character, has some cups on his resume now. So certainly going to be interesting to see how deep they are in their blue line. So I like what the Leafs have done here. They've added a lot. They did not trade a guy like Matthew Nyes or Nick Robertson, so they still have them in the fold for the future. They did trade a lot of draft picks, though. They did move Rasmus Sandin, but the blue line became very, deep, and he became expendable. But at the same time, is he expendable when Justin Hall wasn't? That's still one question mark I kind of had for Dubas. But at the end of the day, Hall probably leaves as a UFA in the summer because he is on an expiring deal. They also picked up Eric Gustafsson in a trade from Washington, who's having a phenomenal offensive season. I'm not sure how they're going to utilize him because he's certainly not going to get a ton of power play time, but that's where he does do best. But he's another depth piece who could score you a big goal from the back end if you really need it, can help you in the power play. Overall, they've really mortgaged the future a lot, but their core group of players is young enough that I'm okay with that, and I think that they need to be aggressive here and go forward with this group. As I've mentioned numerous times, this isn't a very important season for the Leafs to break through here. They've got contracts coming up in the next offseason that can be extended, like Matthews and Nylander. Kyle Dubas doesn't have a contract beyond this year. There's a lot riding on this. If they don't see some more progress, you really have to start questioning the future of things and what's going to happen. So to me, I think they did a real nice job. The Rangers also, I really like what they've done. They added Tarasenko, and Mikula comes in. And then they get Patrick Kane from the New York Rangers. They added Tyler Mott from Ottawa, who was there last year. To me, they've made some real good additions. They didn't subtract anything too crazy. Joe Gautier's gone. Blaze gone. So that team is well stacked. I really like what they've done. It's going to be definitely an arms race in the East. Curious to see how this is all going to play out. But the Rangers, at least, were certainly making a lot of the noise, especially around some of the bigger deals. So things are going to get real interesting here on that front. The New Jersey Devils, I thought, did a real good job. Of course, got Timo Meier. They added Curtis Lazar. Meier's a great piece for the future. Lazar's got a little bit of term, too, which is good. Great bottom 6 forward who can kill penalties and, play a good, solid 2-way game. More defensively, chip in a bit offensively as well. But, getting Meier, one of the top players on the list for the trade bait going into the offseason, or the deadline, that was huge. The Devils are well-positioned to be a team who can contend, I think, for the next 5 to 10 years. So to me, they're in real good shape there. Really like what Tom Fitzgerald did in New Jersey. The Oilers, I thought, had a good deadline, bringing in Matthias Ekholm. They lose Tyson Barrie, But like I said, he kind of became a little bit redundant given the offensive abilities of some of his defensive teammates. They bring in Ekholm, who has a different style of game, much stronger defensively, which is what they really needed to kind of help shut down the other teams that they're playing against. So to me, I really like that move. They pick up Nick Bukestad to have a little bit more depth at center, good size, good PK, face-off, those other intangibles that kind of become important into the late season and playoffs. So overall, I like what the Oilers have done. Some speculation they were in on Erik Karlsson trying to do some bigger things there. That's really hard to do. But overall, I think that they managed to get some important pieces without really going too crazy and giving up too much for the future and kind of balance things out. But I think the Oilers are going to be pretty well positioned here to possibly make a run in the West. Another team I thought did really well was Ottawa. Pulled off the big trade for Jacob Chikrin, finally getting him out of Arizona. They've been coming to this player for several months, over a full season of rumors of them being interested in acquiring him, and the price tag, the rumored asking price was really high. Never happened, and when it did, the price was much, much better. I mean, they didn't give up any of their top prospects that were rumored to be included. And while there was speculation that players like Ridley Gregg, Matt Sogard, Tyler Clevin, or even other players like Shane Pinto might have been requested in the deal. They just did not want to do that. They got away with a few picks, and only one being a first rounder. So ultimately, I think they did a great deal there. That really solidifies things for them. Added Patrick Brown as extra depth, and they didn't sell off any of their UFAs, which, some might say was not a good idea because some of those players may not be back. But right now, they're in position to push for the playoffs. And as Pierre Dorian said, getting those guys some playoff experience is well worth the chance here that they're taking. So ultimately, they're low on picks now for this year. They have a couple of guys like, for example, Watson or Talbot. They may not re-sign. We don't know. They may not come back, and they're not going to get anything in return. But if they can keep them in the lineup, get in the playoffs, and get those young core players that are going to be there for a long time, some valuable experience, even if they lose in the first round, still well worth it in the long run for an experience standpoint in their career. So overall, I think they had a really good deadline. The Boston Bruins had a great number of days leading into the deadline. Don Sweeney, I thought, did a great job. The deal with Washington was phenomenal. Getting Orlov and Hathaway. Orlov looking like Bobby Orr there. I know it's a bit of a drastic joke, of course, but he's been scoring at a crazy pace so far. Only his first few games in the Bruins. Looks awesome out there so far. Great addition. And then they go and get Tyler Bertuzzi from Detroit. So, yeah, they mortgaged the future with some picks going out the door, but didn't really lose a whole lot to get the Craig Smith contract off the books. And they bring in a bunch of help. So, to me, I really like what they've done. Hathaway is just a Bruin. He's got the size, the tenacity, the physicality. He's not afraid to fight. Like that just fits right in perfectly with them. So Orlov is a great help on the blue line. And then on top of that, getting Bertuzzi, now they're going to have a real solid, not only top 6, but top 9. They've been the top team in the NHL through the regular season. And really, this team just got stronger. Now, they have had some injuries lately. You guys like Hall and Foligno. And they might be, I stress might be, we don't know yet, season ending, at least for the regular season. So this team is only going to get better. Bruins are scary good. And Sweeney, I thought, made a lot of great additions. And I can certainly put them here in the winner category for sure. Another team that was more of a seller, but I thought did a good job in their returns was the Blues. I think Doug Armstrong did a good job. But, I will caution you, out of all the winners, I'm going to put them a little lower on the list here. They're almost more in between because they did some good things, but they did some questionable things too. Between trading Tarasenko, they traded, obviously, Ryan O'Reilly, and Mikkola. They got pretty decent returns on those deals. So overall, I think what Armstrong set up for the future was good. Obviously, there's that front. I mean, they also did pick up Kasperi Kapanen off waivers from the Penguins, which I know wasn't a trade, but it still happened close to the deadline. They got Jacob Verana from Detroit today. And on top of that, they also brought back Sammy Blais from the Rangers in the Tarasenko trade. So they kind of got themselves rid of a reputation there for taking on some projects, if you will. Now, Blais played better. Of course, he's already, played there before. Familiarity, he just seemed to fit in a little bit better and do his thing. So we'll see how things work out for him. But, the Kapanen pickup and the Verana pickup, I'm guessing what Armstrong's, his strategy, at least what I think it is, I think he's going to try to get these players in, hope that they can help rehabilitate them a bit, and then trade them later for future assets. They kind of do like a pump and dump type of deal, because they got these players for next to nothing, right? They get Kapanen on a waiver, so there's no price tag there, and they get Verana for dirt cheap. So if they can kind of reinvigorate them, they either become a real big piece of their team and they get a player for nothing, or they, like I said, they rehabilitate them a bit to the point that they can sell it off and get a good asset return for the future. Either way, like I said, I'm not really holding it against them or calling them like there wasn't good deals. Only the main thing is that because of the lack of price that they had to pay, because they got one player for free, one player for almost nothing. So that part I like. It's just a big project, and it's questionable if they're going to fit there. So obviously they're committed to some term and contract. You got to wonder if it's the right deal, but it's not super long. So a little bit of risk, but not too bad. So those are all your winners and losers. Obviously, some teams I didn't discuss today, so they were either quiet or they're kind of neutral, and it really wasn't clear what side to put them on. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Which teams did the best of the deadline and leading into it? Which teams didn't do the best? Which teams you thought were the losers of the deadline this year? And we can discuss that down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.